Hi there, and welcome to English Story Vault. Are you learning English? Perfect. Let's learn English together with a really interesting story. Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's begin. President Donald Trump recently delivered a crucial statement regarding Iran. He announced a 2-week deadline for Iran to make a vital decision. This decision pertains to the approach toward Iran's nuclear program. President Trump expressed a desire to facilitate diplomacy, hoping Iran would agree to last-minute peace talks to entirely halt its nuclear work. The United States aims for Iran to dismantle its capability to construct a nuclear weapon. President Trump affirmed that a peaceful resolution is his primary preference. However, he also clarified that if Iran refuses to negotiate and cease its nuclear activities, the United States is prepared to employ its military might. This implies Iran faces a critical choice: engage in peace talks or risk a devastating war. The Middle East's situation is already very tense. Prior to this announcement, there were recent clashes between Israel and Iran. They exchanged attacks, making the region unstable and perilous. President Trump's 2-week ultimatum comes at a difficult juncture. Nations worldwide are observing this situation with profound concern. They worry about what might transpire over the next 14 days. A countdown has commenced. Iran's decision and President Trump's ultimate choice could profoundly alter the Middle East and have global ramifications. It's a period filled with both hope for a peaceful outcome and fear of a broader conflict. World anxiously awaits to see if diplomacy will succeed in this short time frame, or if tensions will escalate to war too. The core issue, the central problem, was Iran's nuclear program. For some time, Iran had been advancing its nuclear technology, which grew larger and more sophisticated annually. Many nations, particularly the United States and its allies, were deeply concerned. They feared Iran was covertly trying to develop a nuclear weapon. Possessing a nuclear weapon would grant Iran significant power in the Middle East and pose a great threat to others. Given these anxieties, the United States government had very firm demands for Iran. President Trump's administration explicitly stated its requirements. Firstly, it demanded Iran completely cease producing nuclear material, specifically enriched uranium. Producing enriched uranium is a critical step towards building a bomb, and the U.S. wanted this work entirely halted. Secondly, the U.S. demanded Iran dismantle all equipment and knowledge usable for nuclear weapon construction, seeking the total elimination or dismantling of Iran's bomb-making capacity. However, Iran viewed the situation very differently. Iran maintained its nuclear program was solely for peaceful purposes, citing the need for nuclear power to generate electricity for its cities and homes, as well as for medical and scientific applications. Iran asserted its right, like other countries, to use nuclear energy for these legitimate reasons. They stated they were not attempting to build a bomb and would not agree to halt their peaceful nuclear work merely because the U.S. demanded it. This challenging situation recently became far more dangerous with military attacks between Israel and Iran. Israel launched attacks on specific locations within Iran, including nuclear program sites. These Israeli actions significantly heightened already elevated tensions, demonstrating the imminent possibility of an actual war. It's large and perilous. Problem: Iran's advancing nuclear program, the strong U.S. demands, Iran's firm refusal, and recent military actions was the critical issue. It was the central challenge President Trump had to confront. His decision within the 2-week time frame directly concerned this nuclear issue. Would he find a way to halt Iran's nuclear program through talks, or would the failure to resolve this problem lead to war? This problem lay at the heart of the crisis. 3. Iran's rejection. President Donald Trump set a 2-week deadline for Iran to agree to nuclear program talks, threatening military action otherwise. But Iran swiftly rejected this proposal. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, issued a strong retort. He declared the Iranian nation would not surrender or succumb to pressure from the United States or Israel. He also cautioned that any attack on Iran would negatively impact the attacking country. Key Iranian government officials also spoke out. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bugar Khalibov called Trump's two-week offer not a genuine peace proposal, but a prelude to war, he asserted. Trump aimed to impose peace through threats of violence. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Nasser Kanani stated Iran's sole interest was reinstating the 2015 nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA. They desired the full deal back, not a new one or a partial return. Iranian officials were clear about their conditions. For negotiations, first, America must fully rejoin the JCPOA. Second, Iran would not negotiate under attack. Israel's bombing campaign had to cease. They also claimed the U.S. was not restraining its ally, Israel. While acknowledging indirect talks with the U.S. and Oman, Iran refused. Small, temporary deals outside the JCPOA. Senior diplomat Abbas Araki stated Iran had only retaliated against Israel, remaining open to talks while also protecting itself, covertly. Iranian officials informed other countries they would not halt enriched uranium production, a cornerstone of their nuclear program. They asserted they would not let Trump compel them to destroy their nuclear capabilities. Thus, Iran's response was firm. They rejected Trump's two-week ultimatum. They stated they would not stop their nuclear program or engage in talks due to threats. They viewed the deadline as a flawed plan to coerce them into difficult concessions. Declaring they would continue enriching uranium and developing missiles, refusing to negotiate under pressure. This demonstrated that finding a simple path forward would be extremely challenging. 4. The timing of the deadline. President Trump announced his two-week deadline due to the volatile situation in the Middle East. The primary catalyst was the escalating shadow war between Israel and Iran. Iran attacked Israel with drones and missiles, followed by Israeli attacks on sites within Iran, including significant nuclear facilities. This made the situation extremely dangerous, imperiling the entire region. Israel's leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, strongly sought U.S. assistance and backing. Placing considerable pressure on President Trump, he had to determine America's course of action in this intensifying conflict. With the world watching for the U.S. response, domestically, opinions varied. Some labeled hawks like Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican close to President Trump, advocated immediate U.S. military force against Iran. Graham suggested President Trump aid Israel in destroying Iran's nuclear program, especially deeply buried facilities. However, other advisors were more cautious, warning that attacking Iran could ignite a protracted and destructive war, causing widespread suffering. Oil industry professionals also worried about the impact on global oil prices and supplies if conflict erupted. President Trump had to weigh these diverse perspectives and pressures. He aimed to project strength and decisiveness, appealing to many of his supporters who favored forceful action against adversaries. Concurrently, he needed to consider the wishes of U.S. allies in Europe, and if possible, avoid a full-scale war. European nations like Germany, France, and the United Kingdom were deeply concerned about a major Middle East war, strongly advocating for diplomacy and talks to prevent conflict expansion. They urged President Trump to pursue negotiation, not fighting. Saudi Arabia also worried about regional conflict, quietly urging Iran to seriously consider the U.S. offer, given the limited time and potential for Israeli attack. This underscored widespread international apprehension. The two-week deadline appeared to be President Trump's way of managing these conflicting pressures. It kept military action as an option, satisfying hawks and projecting strength to Iran, while also creating a small window for diplomacy, as desired by U.S. allies. Deploying U.S. warships and missiles to the region further signaled military readiness. President Trump sought to maintain control during a difficult and dangerous period. Some in the U.S. questioned the sincerity of President Trump's offer for talks, recalling past deadlines that yielded little action. Others believed offering talks could garner support from international partners, seeking peace while still appearing tough to his domestic base. Thus, the decision to announce the deadline was a complex maneuver, a reaction to the worsening Israel-Iran conflict, a balancing act between domestic and international pressures, and a strategy to gain time and keep options open in a very risky situation. Attempting to find a path between war and talks. 5. global concerns countries. Worldwide reacted to President Donald Trump's words, closely observing the situation with Iran. Different nations held varying views on the next steps. Israel unequivocally supported strong U.S. action against Iran, as potentially military, believing it essential to halt Iran's nuclear program. However, key European nations felt differently. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom were deeply concerned. Opposing war, they swiftly called for talks, seeking a peaceful resolution to prevent a larger regional conflict. Saudi Arabia also watched cautiously, worried about a Middle East war which could severely impact them, yet also highly concerned about Iran acquiring nuclear weapons. Saudi Arabia advocated for talks between Iran and the U.S., sending messages that time was short. Russia and China offered their opinions, both urging calm and opposing fighting. They supported a return to talks, advocating caution to avoid escalation. Many other countries, including Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, and India, also expressed desires for peace, urging all parties to engage in dialogue and de-escalate the danger. The world perceived the 2-week deadline. Some nations endorsed strong measures, while others strongly pushed for negotiation. Everyone felt the anxiety about what might unfold if diplomacy failed. 6. Historical context. The Iran nuclear issue has a long, intricate history. To grasp the current situation, a look back is crucial. In 2015, Iran and 6 world powers, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, China, and Germany, it's a landmark agreement, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. The JCPOA's primary goal was to ensure Iran's nuclear program remained peaceful. Under the agreement, Iran accepted stringent limits on its nuclear activities. For example, it agreed to reduce the number of centrifuges used for uranium enrichment and to maintain only a small amount of enriched uranium. International inspectors from the IAEA were granted frequent access to Iran's nuclear sites to verify compliance. In return for these limitations, numerous economic sanctions against Iran were lifted by the other countries. Supporters of the deal believed it prevented Iran from rapidly developing a nuclear weapon. However, some nations, like Israel and Saudi Arabia, worried the deal didn't go far enough and merely delayed Iran's nuclear ambitions. A significant shift occurred in 2018 when President Donald Trump announced the United States' withdrawal from the JCPOA. Deeming it a bad deal for the U.S. after withdrawing, the U.S. reimposed many severe economic sanctions on Iran. European nations involved in the deal attempted to preserve it, hoping Iran would still adhere to the rules. Initially, Iran committed to upholding its promises, but this didn't last long. Starting in late 2019, Iran gradually reduced its compliance with the agreement. It increased its production of enriched uranium and began using more advanced centrifuges. International inspectors reported Iran was enriching uranium to levels far exceeding the JCPOA's 3.67% limit, reaching near 60% by early 2023. This meant Iran's nuclear program expanded significantly after the U.S. left the deal. When President Joe Biden took office in 2021, his administration stated the U.S. was prepared to rejoin the JCPOA, but only if Iran fully returned to the deal's rules. Talks resumed, primarily in Vienna, to try and bring both sides back to the agreement. These discussions proved very difficult. Iran demanded the U.S. immediately lift all sanctions before Iran would fully comply. The U.S. and European partners insisted Iran must first reverse its nuclear steps taken since 2018. Despite many rounds of talks in 2021 and 2022, no breakthrough occurred, and discussions stalled. By 2023 and 2024, efforts to revive the deal had largely ceased. Iran continued developing its nuclear capabilities. By June 2025, the historical Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was effectively defunct. Many sanctions remained, and Iran's nuclear program had advanced significantly beyond the limits agreed upon 10 years earlier. The history reveals a trajectory from agreement to breakdown, followed by failed attempts at repair, leading to today's difficult situation. 7. Expert perspectives. Many experts knowledgeable about international relations and global issues, including former government officials and academics, are offering their insights on this challenging situation. They hold diverse opinions. Some experts are skeptical about whether President Trump's 2-week deadline for talks is a genuine offer. They suspect it might be a tactic to exert pressure on Iran or simply a means to gain attention. They recall, President Trump has used similar deadlines on other issues previously, and outcomes didn't always materialize by the exact stated time. However, many experts issue strong warnings about the potential consequences if the U.S. uses military force against Iran. They argue that bombing Iran could have very detrimental results. They worry that military strikes might not permanently halt Iran's nuclear program. Even if some sites are bombed, Iran still possesses the knowledge and personnel to potentially rebuild later. Experts caution that military action could even strengthen Iran's resolve to pursue nuclear weapons, believing them necessary for security. Some experts note that military strikes are easier to initiate than to conclude. Fearing a limited attack could quickly escalate into a much larger conflict. Another significant point from experts is the immense difficulty of forging a new agreement. Even if talks proceed, Iran asserts its right to produce nuclear fuel for peaceful energy, while the U.S. demands Iran completely cease uranium enrichment. Experts view this disparity as a formidable, hard-to-resolve problem. Experts also consider the broader implications of a war, worrying about its impact on global oil prices, which could harm many countries' economies. They are also deeply concerned about the people living in the region, as war can cause immense suffering for ordinary families and civilians. Experts hope leaders will carefully consider these human dangers before making a decision. Thus, experts' views highlight that the path ahead is fraught with perils and difficult choices, underscoring the numerous problems with using force and the significant challenges in finding a peaceful resolution to this crisis. 8. The next steps. The 2-week deadline set by President Donald Trump for a decision on Iran's nuclear program is now nearing its conclusion. This is a critical moment. With the world closely watching for the next development, plans for important discussions are progressing. Iran's foreign minister is anticipated to meet with European officials in Geneva. This meeting is seen as an opportunity to assess Iran's genuine readiness for serious talks about its nuclear activities, a test before President Trump makes a final decision. The United States government is coordinating with its European allies regarding the progress of these talks. President Trump faces a very tough choice in the coming days. Around early July, he must decide whether to intensify efforts to find a diplomatic solution with Iran or if he will authorize military action. It's also possible he might choose to extend the time frame for negotiations. Any path chosen carries significant risks and could affect many distant countries. If more diplomacy is pursued, reaching a deal will be very challenging. The United States wants Iran to fully halt nuclear material production and remove anything usable for weapons. Iran insists on its right to peaceful nuclear technology and demands America fully reinstate the old 2015 agreement. Finding a solution that satisfies both sides appears very difficult.